Welcome to Fridays with Father Geckle, a weekly show covering tradition, culture, and news on the Traditionalist Podcast. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today on the Traditionalist Podcast. This has been, I know I said it last week, but it's been another week full of fantastic stories and interesting news to comment on, and we've got a lot of things to talk about, and we're going to get right into it in just a minute here. I'm going to keep this one, we'll see if it's shorter. I don't know if it'll be shorter, but I've got fewer topics to discuss this time. Instead of having like 10, I've got three main topics to talk about today. I first want to talk about some of the news about the southern border and the executive orders and decisions that have been made to actually secure the border and sending even the military down there to get things in order. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Next, I want to bring up just a general topic it's not anything new. It's not anything that's come up this week, but it's really been in the forefront in my mind, looking at the different stories, the different news, and that is looking at the just utter hypocrisy of the left and how they politicize issues and then accuse the other side of politicizing issues, which they are politicizing, and just some of the contradictions and hypocrisy there that is just frustrating. And then the third topic I want to bring up, I've been wanting to talk about this all week, is the Pope guy, Francis Bergoglio, and some interesting stories relating to that. But before we get into those topics, and you are subjected to me blabbering on about these topics and my opinions on them, I first want to say thank you for all of the fantastic comments on the last video, my show from last week. I really appreciated how much good feedback there was. I was surprised because, as I mentioned in that episode, I kind of did this last minute. Part of it was some unforeseen things coming up in the week, and the other part was me procrastinating. Got to be honest, I'm pretty bad about procrastinating. Well, I'm pretty good at procrastinating. I'm a pro at procrastinating, so that was part of the problem. But in spite of that, and in spite of my 500 repetitions of, I don't know if anybody else was extremely irritated by that, but I listened back to the recording to just take away what I could improve on, and it drove me crazy how many times I said, I'm going to really try to cut back on those filler words like that. We'll see. Hopefully I'll do better on that today. But anyway, there were a lot of really good comments. In fact, almost every single comment on there was a very positive one. Very good feedback and commentary. I really like seeing that. I didn't respond to everybody. I tried to respond to everybody. I know I missed a couple there in the last couple days, but I just wanted to say I really appreciate that. And having such good feedback not only helps encourage me to keep going and keep doing this, but also just shows me where the direction of the viewers is, or where the mindset of the viewers is. And I really appreciate that, because I want to give something that you will appreciate, that you will enjoy, that you'll take from seeing that really fantastic feedback. Is really nice, really great to see. So thank you for that feedback, and for all the thumbs up, all the likes. That's something that I want to ask on every show. If you just hit the like button, share it if you like, subscribe if you aren't already. But the likes is great. We look at the view number, the view count, how many views we get, and then looking at the likes shows us, somebody can click on the video and watch for 30 seconds or a minute and say, I'm done. But if somebody thumbs up, that probably means they actually liked it and they actually watched the whole thing. So that not only helps with the algorithms and shows YouTube that this is worth the watch, worth recommending to other people, but it also gives a boost of confidence to the producers here as well. Shows us that it's appreciated. And so if you're listening, if you're watching, if you can hit that thumbs up button, it only takes a second. Just hit that thumbs up button. We'd appreciate that. We're wanting to get this content out there, spread the word, spread the news, and make this channel more visible for more people. Hopefully that'll be a good thing. But hitting that like button will help us out that way. That's the kind of support we want. And let's get into the topics. Before getting into those three main heads, I just got to say, how fantastic is the Babylon Bee? I love memes. I love having just a hypocrisy of, any hypocrisy pointed out in a humorous way. And, if you can't laugh at things, if you can't laugh at what's going on in the world, life's pretty miserable, kind of stinks. And, well, yeah. So, if you look in the Babylon Bee, we've got, especially the Babylon Bee is always fantastic, but we've got a lot of really funny ones this past week. This one here about the White House reporter. White House reporters mystified by press secretary who answers questions. That was hilarious. I watched some of the clips from Carolyn Levitt's first briefing there, and it's just so funny to see the night and day difference between people that are competent and people that can actually stand on, well, just have legs to stand on as far as honesty and not hiding the truth. They can actually answer questions because they're not afraid of the truth. This is another one I thought was really funny. Exhausted media begs Trump to take a day off. That's so true. There's been so many things for them to keep up on that they can't spin a story for 2 weeks because there's no other news going on. It's just like they're getting pounded with one thing after another. So it's been pretty funny watching the different takes that the Babylon Bee has had coming up. Here's another funny one. Confused Joe Biden shows up to Monday morning staff meeting. Yeah, this is great. You gotta love the Babylon Bee. You gotta love the humor, the wit that goes into the production of such high quality memes and such funny takes on things. So that's funny. I love following their stuff there. At least the headlines, even if you don't read I don't often read the whole story or whatever. I just look at the headline or the meme. But anyway, so moving on, the southern border. I found it incredibly refreshing to see the military deployed to the southern border. Common sense. It's the first thing that comes to mind. Common sense. We have how many military bases around the world? If I remember correctly, the number is 80. Don't want to get into a conversation about if that's important or if that's bad or if that's good. But just the common sense notion, the incredible notion that we could secure our border by using our military, taxpayer-funded military, our extremely effective fighting force, using them to stop illegals, to stop criminals, to stop terrorists from pouring over the southern border. What a novel idea. It's incredible that no politicians that we've had in the last how many years have thought that maybe we should do that. Maybe if we're worried about the southern border, which, well, I don't think our previous administration thought about that. They didn't care, or they wanted it to come in, I think. But all of the people complaining about it or saying we need to fix it, we need to change it, we can't do anything about it, it's just too big of a problem. It's like, we have arguably the most powerful military in the world. Could have a discussion on whether that is the truth or not. Depends who you talk to. There are different opinions on that. But, I think we do have probably the best military in the world. And there's a problem. If the military, there'd be a ridiculous problem if the military couldn't handle this problem. All right. They've been saying, Border Patrol, ICE, they can't handle the problem they can't take care of it. There's no way they can stop this. It's like, great. We have the largest military in the world, probably. We have the greatest military in the world. And what are they doing? What are they being used for? How about instead of sending them over to fight some proxy war, how about, rather than just having them sitting around doing nothing, how about we make use of them? You're having to fund the military anyway. You're having to spend all of this money to equip them, to supply them, to pay their salary, their wages, which they need, they deserve. Why not put them to good use? One of my brothers was in the Army. He was a tank driver. He was in the cavalry. And he got deployed to Iraq for a year and a half, I believe. And I was just in grade school when it happened. He went over the border into Iraq when that whole conflict started. We were obviously very worried about his safety and hoping and praying that he make it home. But one of the things I remember later on that he mentioned was, of all of the years that he was in the military, being deployed to Iraq was, to him, the best part, because there was actually something to do. He was saying that while they were in the States, it was just so boring. There was absolutely nothing to do. Their sergeant might come out and say, "Oh, go clean, go take the treads off the tank and clean them," and they would do that all the time. Or there's just nothing for them to do. I'm pretty sure that, like 99.9% of all men, they would rather be doing something, accomplishing something, having a quest, as having something to do, rather than sitting around doing nothing. I'm pretty darn sure that the military would be happier. The men in the military would be a lot happier going and doing something that actually they can be proud of. They have something to show for it. So we've got this story I'm going to share here from InfoWars. Border bombshell. Trump deploys armed Marines to the U.S.-Mexico border in response to escalating cartel attacks on U.S. citizens. Got the story here. So this is I think just such a great thing to see, that has been ordered by the executive branch, by Trump. And this is in response to cartel attacks. Like, I mean, that's not surprising that the cartels are going to fight back. They're very violent, barbaric people down there. So I think that some military had been sent down there already, but then they sent the Marines down there in response to the attacks. So it's nice to see this story, this news. And you know what? Hopefully they wrap it up quickly. Hopefully there aren't any casualties on our side at all. And knowing the effectiveness of our military and the equipment and the technology that they have, there shouldn't be any casualties. Hopefully that there aren't any problems. But if there are more problems, we have a huge military, and it would be really nice to see them utilized further in this way if necessary, to take care of that border and to clean up and clean out those drug cartels. Nice to see development on that score. So I'm sure everybody has seen that story. To me, that's a huge thing, the huge thing that I want to talk about. I have the utmost respect for the military, the men that serve in the military. I don't have a lot of respect for the leaders, the generals, at least most of them from what I know, from what I've heard from people that are in the military. But as far as the idea of serving your country, making the sacrifices involved, the utmost respect for them. Grandfather was in the military. My parents at one time were both in the military. One of my brothers, as I said, was in the military. Something that I have a lot of respect for. And I'm very happy to see that they are being used in this way. And pray for their safety as well. I hope and pray that nobody gets hurt, or definitely nobody loses their lives. But yeah, I'm glad to see the development of that news. But want to move on to another story here. This isn't anything new by any means, but it's something that I just see. I don't know. I just want to talk about it because it's been on my mind a lot recently with a lot of the news that has come out, and seeing the lefts go crazy when there's a lot of good things, arguably objectively good things for our country, for our people, and how it's twisted by the media, how it's twisted by politicians and other interested parties. There's just so much hypocrisy and so many disgusting cases, disgusting examples of issues being politicized. Rules for me, but not for thee. Taking a stance on one issue and then contradicting yourself, being a hypocrite about it on another issue. And, I just said, that's the first time I caught myself. I need to stop saying that. One of the things that really I kind of laughed at out loud when I saw it is the media and leftists complaining that Trump promised to lower prices. But he hasn't yet. It's been a whole week, and the prices of things haven't gone down. Eggs are at an all-time high. And there is a great meme I saw. I don't have it with me, so I can't share it. But it was a scene of Mel Gibson in the movie Braveheart. And this meme has been used before for other things. But it said, leftists watching the price of groceries. And it said like 21, 22. And it's like, hold. And this says 20, 23, 24, hold. And then it shows President Trump in 25, and it says like, now. And it's just making a meme about how now everybody's saying, hey, look how expensive groceries are. Look how high the price of eggs is. Can you believe this? It's like, Anybody that has a brain that's functioning, that can look at things objectively, has been talking about this already. It's not anything new, but suddenly it's new because there's a different administration, and it's so disgusting. It's so frustrating. But that's like one small example of that. Complaining about the economy now and blaming somebody that's been in there for a week, rather than looking at what's the actual cause of the increase in prices, the eggs being ridiculously priced and other groceries. Why has all of that been going up? Why did it jump like crazy at the beginning of Biden's administration and then didn't get as bad, but still stayed up there? There's no sense of objectivity. There's no sense of cause and effect. You know, another another silly one was when they were on Sunday talking about the tariffs that Trump was going to impose on Colombia for not taking back the illegals that were being sent back. And you see the leftists losing their mind, saying flowers and coffee are going to be so much higher. Trump said he was going to lower prices, and now this is going to hurt people because flowers and coffee is going to cost more because of these tariffs. And there was no complaining about the billions of dollars that were sent to Ukraine. No complaints about that. No problem. That's fine. We need to do that. But imposing tariffs on a country, or threatening to impose tariffs on a country, it's just so nonsensical. It's so, just gotta say, stupid. It's just so dumb and so stupid to see the outrage, to see the response of the left over stories like this. And I said, that's the second time I said, I caught myself. That's probably you're probably going to get more annoyed of me catching myself saying than saying without me catching it. I got all that to work on here. It's interesting. This is one good thing about attempting this podcast has been realizing how bad my public speaking actually is. It's actually quite laughable. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So moving on. Other examples of this, the hypocrisy and politicizing issues. There's always this talk about caring about the children. Care about the children. And yes, absolutely. They're the innocent children, their lives, their well-being. That's what the family is for. That's what the government is for. Without, the family is the building block, the basic building block of society. And of course, caring about the children. But isn't it funny? Isn't it ironic that children only become an issue when it's something that they can politicize to their advantage or to try to tear down the other side? It's always about the children when there's something that they can politicize. But objectively, they don't care at all. Maybe that's taking it too far for me to make such an assertion. But is it though? Is it really taking it too far to say that leftists who push these agendas really don't care about children at all? When you look at the school shootings that take place, when it's somebody that's transgender, they don't talk about it. They don't care. They don't care about those kids that are threatened. But when it's somebody that is white, that they can twist the narrative to make it seem like it's some white nationalist or Christian or whatever, some right-leaning or Republican supporter that goes crazy or loses their mind. Usually it's fake news, it's false the way they twist it, as far as like where their sympathies lies or what was the cause of such a shooting. But the ones that can be politicized, they talk about. The ones that have root causes in something like mental health or transgender, something like that, leftist liberal ideas that are insane, they don't talk about that. They don't care about those situations. Do they care about children that are trafficked? Do they care about the children that are hurt in this way? The most disgusting and heartbreaking issue in our day, along with abortion and child trafficking, are the two worst issues socially. I think you could say that without a doubt. They're two of the worst social issues in our day. The most heartbreaking stories, most heartbreaking issues, at least. I haven't seen the movie The Sound of Freedom. I probably should. I don't really want to, not because I don't want to look at the issue, how bad it is. Like, I just don't want to really be presented with the I don't know, the scenes in which certain things are suggested. As a priest, that's not something that I really want to watch. But that's something that I think was a huge thing this past year, looking at how that was a movie that was produced that did bring more attention to this problem. But they like to talk about the border and caring about the children that are separated from their families. But they don't talk about the hundreds of thousands of children that have gone missing because they've been brought across for trafficking rings. For that purpose. I don't want to ever hear any leftists talk about caring for people, caring for children, caring for immigrants, if they don't address this issue of the child trafficking that has taken place. And one of the stories that came out in the last couple days, I would say it's shocking, but really, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't shocked at all when I saw it. I'm sure you've seen this story, that during the Biden administration, with the influx of illegal immigrants, there are 300,000 missing children. 100,000 missing children. And in 4 days, and they said that they couldn't find them. They didn't know where they were, and they'd have to look into it. Day four of the Trump administration coming in, they found 75,000 of them. The unsolvable mystery of where these poor children went, where they ended up. 4 days. That's all it took. Why? Because they already knew. They could have gone in there before and helped them, found them, taken care of them, and they didn't. There should be some serious consequences for this, like the most serious consequence, not only for the people that have done these crimes on the ground, involved in these trafficking rings, involved in these crimes against children, but I believe that the officials that let these things happen through gross negligence or some other motivation, I think there should be capital punishment for them as well, or some very serious penalties. Otherwise, it'll probably happen again with another administration. There won't be an example of how justice should be served for such disgusting and evil, absolutely evil behavior. This is something that I like to see in contrast between the liberals who talk a good talk, that politicize issues, but don't do anything about the issues, versus some of the people that the Trump administration has in there that is actually, by their actions, I can't talk about their motivations or their intentions, but you can look at what they're doing. Actions speak a heck of a lot louder than words. And when you see the action being taken here on the southern border and with these children, that says a lot. Says a lot more than their polished words of the leftist lunatics and the leftist politicians and media personalities who go on about caring about children, but then turn their eyes away from these real issues and these real problems that could be solved if they actually cared about the issues. Another one is that, they're always talking about women and talking about nationality, different races, but in particular talking about, care about women. Why don't you care about women? Why don't you care about their rights? They say they care about women, and then they applaud when a man who dresses up and acts like a woman, who thinks he's a woman or pretends to believe that he's a woman, goes in and beats up women in a boxing ring at the Olympics or in their other sports. They care about women. Really. They really do. That's a bunch of garbage. They say they care about women and then drill into their head that you should have abortions, and that this is a right for you. Women's abortion rights, their health care, as they say. It's disgusting. And the research says that those women are horribly hurt mentally, psychologically by those abortions. One of the greatest things that can happen for a woman is that they become a mother. It's a transformative thing for men and women, of course, to have a child. It's one of the most beautiful things. But they paint it as a bad thing. The thing that can be most fulfilling in life and bring the most full and long-standing happiness and fulfillment is painted as undesirable. But killing your child in the womb is good for you. That's what will make you happy. What a bunch of garbage. Could use much worse words, but I won't. Another one, you care about women? Okay, let's abolish pornography. Let's go to these companies that produce this garbage, this filth, that it is, everybody knows. Everybody knows that it's hurting them, it's harming them. You care about women? Let's get on a bandwagon to abolish pornography, to make it illegal, to stop harming women in that fashion. You care about women? Let's see you get rid of abortion. Oh, you won't? Why? You won't get rid of abortion? You won't get rid of pornography? You won't punish these people that are harming these poor women? That hold before them this idea, this ridiculous notion that that'll make them more fulfilled, that'll make them more happy. You'll be free. I don't know if there's so few things that are sadder than that. These issues that I'm talking about here. Child trafficking, abortion, women being mistreated and harmed through the pornography industry. These are some really awful issues. Really awful issues. Why aren't they talked about more? Why isn't there more activism to eradicate them, to make them, as they say, unthinkable? I would really like to see more of a movement in that direction in our politics, in our discussions online. Get rid of this garbage about it being freeing, that it's somehow a symbol of independence and freedom to be a part of the pornography industry. It would be really great if these could become more of an issue in American politics. I know there's so many other things that have to be taken care of before we can get to that point, and I think it's probably going to be a generation or many generational thing. But that's really something that's would be worth praying about, sacrificing for. How many poor children are harmed? How many tragedies there are from these issues? People don't like to be involved in politics. I certainly chose a different career path. This is the last thing that I would want to be involved in. But what things could be done? What things could be done? Here's something for you to comment on. In the comments, I'd like to get your feedback on this. I don't have a whole lot of political, know-how of how to get things done. But is there anything that could be done in our states here and now, like in the very near future, to start attacking that issue on pornography? What's something that could be done there? I'd really like to get some feedback on that. Because I'm bringing the topic up, addressing it, and it's something everybody knows is awful. Anybody that's following this channel, of course, is going to agree with me on that. But what could be done? Is there anything that could be done right now? What kind of lobbies or what direction could be taken? It's really such an important issue and something we should care about. People should be willing to bring it up, to discuss it. It's one of those things you don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I wish it didn't exist. I wish we didn't have to talk about it. But it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. And it's really harming young people. It harms everyone, but it's really harming the young people that are given free access to phones, to the internet. And so we're accessing it at a younger and younger age because it's, well, if they're going to public schools, it's being talked about when they're in kindergarten. And the access is just everywhere. I don't want to keep talking on this point, but it's so sad. It's so sad, and I wish, hope, and pray that there's something that will be done in the very, very near future. Anyway, that's some thoughts on that. I'm going to move on to another topic. This is a topic that I got really fired up when I first saw it. The Pope guy. Let me share this story here. This is again from InfoWars. Someone sent me this article a few days ago. He ought to focus on fixing the Catholic Church. Homan has choice words for Pope. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, had some choice words for Pope Francis after the pontiff criticized Trump's deportation program as a disgrace. In an appearance on Newsmax, Homan was asked to respond to the Pope's criticism, and he didn't hold back. Quote, "Let me give a message to the Pope guy. I'm a lifelong Catholic, and I've been through the Catholic doctrine. He ought to concentrate on fixing the Catholic Church, first of all. He's got big problems there. They have a wall around the Vatican. And if you illegally enter the Vatican, the crime is serious. You'll be charged with a serious crime, be jailed. So he can protect the Vatican where he lives. He can build a wall where he lives. But American people are not allowed that. Securing the border saves lives. When less people come and less women get raped by the cartels, less children die in the river, less Americans die from fentanyl overdoses. He ought to stick to the Catholic Church and fix that. That's a mess." And this was followed by another story here with J.D. Vance, an interview on Face the Nation. Look in the mirror. Vance slams Catholic bishops over deportation crisis. The vice president, who is himself a Catholic, was appearing on CBS News' Face the Nation on Sunday when he was asked about a statement by the U.S. CCB, it's a U.S. something of Catholic bishops, criticizing the president's executive orders on immigration. In particular, the statement criticizes guidance that immigration officials can enter schools and churches to arrest illegal immigrants. Non-emergency immigration enforcement in schools, places of worship, social service agencies, healthcare facilities, or other sensitive settings where people receive essential services would be contrary to the common good, the U.S. CCB statement read. In response, the vice president said he was heartbroken by the statement. Quote, "I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns?" Vance asked. Or are they actually worried about their bottom line? He continued, quote, "If the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is worried about the humanitarian costs of enforcing immigration law, let them talk about the children who were sex trafficked because of the wide-open border. Let them talk about the people like Lake and Riley who were brutally murdered." So I saw these two stories, these two headlines pop up within a couple days of each other. And, well, I've got a lot of thoughts. Got a lot of thoughts to share on this. I thought about making a separate video just on this issue. It's so sad to me, as a Catholic priest, as a Catholic in general, to see the deception and the hypocrisy that is at work with regards to the Catholic Church. The deception that is the Catholic Church is what saddens me so much, that so many people are misled by this. We have these two individuals who say they're Catholic, they profess a Catholic faith. In J.D. Vance's case, he converted to Catholicism, and I see some people criticizing him and saying he's not a real Catholic and that it's all for show. I don't know anything about that, and I'm not going to make any pronouncement on that one way or another. But usually, when somebody who's not a Catholic converts, is baptized, usually they're at least doing some thinking, some soul-searching, making some serious decisions and changes to their life and embracing that. So, just going to leave that there. for some people that criticize him. I know some people that know J.D. Vance personally. They said he's a really, really good guy. And our presumption is that someone is sincere until proven otherwise. But that aside, you have people like Holman, says he's a lifelong Catholic. You have people like J.D. Vance, who's converted to Catholicism, at least as best he knows. And they're faced with this hypocrisy. They're faced with these individuals leading the church to which they belong. And on pretty much every issue, the church to which they belong to, the leaders of that church, are hook, line, and sinker with the liberal agenda, with the one world globalist agenda. We saw this with COVID. We saw how quick that church was to shut the churches down, to tell people, don't go to church because it's not essential. And we need to lock down. You need to take the vaccine. Francis told everyone it was a moral obligation for them to get the vaccine. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a really good YouTube clip, got a lot of views, of one of our priests, Father Gabriel Avery, before the Ohio Senate or Commission or something, where he talked about how there are moral problems involved here, and taking the vaccine, this untested thing, we have an obligation to not take it. There is no obligation to take it. And he explained why. He gave the moral principles why. And then was questioned why he disagreed as a Catholic priest. Why would he disagree with Francis? You can look that one up on YouTube, Father Gabriel Avery, before the Ohio Senate. So we saw that with COVID. We saw, and it brought a lot of people around kind of wake up to what was going on in the church. We saw this church, hook, line, and sinker, on the side of the liberals, of this immoral issue, of this wrong issue, and advising immoral, dangerous advice, giving that direction. We see this with the immigration issue. We see that they push for open borders, that you have to be charitable, you have to be kind, while ignoring the bad effects of said policies. They make this a huge issue. You know what doesn't come up? You know what doesn't come up in these issues? God. Somehow, this church ignores God, His rights, and our obligation to follow His laws. Talk about humanity all the time. Where's it talk about God? Where's it talk about His laws, His rights, our obligation to Him? Where's that? They might talk about it when it suits them, but on big issues, moral issues, where are they? Where's that talk? And it's so sad. It's so sad to see so many people of goodwill that want to be Catholic led astray, confused, misled, misdirected by this church. And I do not call it the Catholic Church. If there's anybody here that's new to this issue, that's listening, that hasn't heard this before, we don't have a pope. We haven't had a pope for decades. The church has been infiltrated. It's a new church. It's not the Catholic Church. There are many people that are angry at the Catholic Church, what they believe is the Catholic Church, but it's not. Their anger is misplaced. And I want to get into that a little bit in detail. As I said, this is something that got me pretty worked up. I should have done just a separate video on this, but I'm going to bring it up here and get into it a little bit. There is this deception that even though a new religion has been preached since the 1960s in Vatican II, there's this notion that it's the same church, the same religion, and that's false. That's a deception. That's what they want you to think, but it's not the truth. Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the truth, and Satan is the father of lies. And when you see lies in these supposed church teachings, that can't come from Christ. It can't come from God. Church also can't contradict herself on matters of faith and morals. The church can't say one day that it's a mortal sin, it's a serious sin, a grave offense against the law of God, to worship with false religions, to worship false gods. The church can't say that is true today, and then tomorrow say, go and worship with all religions because the Holy Ghost is inspiring them. And they're on the journey towards the truth. If that first statement is true, which it is, pretty sure there's a commandment, the first one that talks about that. And there's plenty of church laws talking about that. That is true. So the opposite has to be false. And the church can't contradict herself in that. Church can't contradict her own teachings. The church can't contradict the law of God. The voice of the church is the voice of Christ. Christ said to St. Peter, I say to thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. Singular, my church. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. He said, he who hears you hears me. So the voice, I'm not trying to make a very intellectual argument or a very highfalutin discussion on this matter. There's plenty of those online and other sources by priests and by other lay people that are much more intelligent than me. That's not saying a whole lot. Being more intelligent than me is not saying a whole lot. I'm not trying to make some great logical argument here. I'm just a simple priest. I'm not an intellectual. I'm just trying to speak common sense and speak very simply to anyone that might benefit from it. I have no delusions that I'm some great theologian or some intellectual. Anybody that knows me, no, that's not true. So this is just a very simple discussion, very simple point. Christ said, he who hears you hears me. And in the voice of the Pope, when he speaks on matters of faith and morals, that is the voice of Christ. Christ can't contradict himself. And you see in the teachings of the Church throughout all of history, throughout all of the almost 2,000 years that the Catholic Church has been in existence, you see a unity of faith. You see that the voice of the Pope is one with the voice of Christ. Then Vatican II happened. And it doesn't hold true anymore of those papal claimants, because they're teaching a new doctrine, a new religion. We think of those words of St. Paul in Galatians, that if I or even an angel from heaven were to preach a new gospel other than what I have delivered to you, let him be anathema. There can be no new gospel. Vatican II brought in a new gospel, a new faith, a new religion, new sacraments. That's an important issue, because a lot of people, unfortunately, think it's all about just the Latin Mass. And that is a major issue, of course. They changed the Mass. They brought in an abomination in the Novus Ordo Mass, which if you look at Catholic teaching prior to Vatican II, it's not a true Mass. It's not a valid Mass. It's not a true sacrifice. It's been robbed of that. So it cannot give grace. It's not instituted by Christ. Can't give grace. It's not a sacrament anymore. It's not a sacrifice anymore. And a lot of people have been told that that's the only issue, and it's not. The faith has been changed. The sacraments and the Mass have been changed as well. Not just the Mass, but the sacrament of holy orders. People will unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get some of these issues about changing the faith in a new religion, and they don't like the Novus Ordo Mass because it's so obviously harmful and a disgrace, and they won't go to the Novus Ordo Mass. So they'll go find a Latin Mass somewhere, and they settle with that because they have the outward appearances of the Mass. and the reverence that is due to the Mass, to the Church, to sacrifice and worship of God. But they stopped there. And they've been misled in this area. I'm not trying to be mean or harsh or anything like that. I know really good people, really solid Catholics that have been misled by this. And out of a desire to follow the Church, they still stay in these institutions, these groups. And they're told that we don't do the Novus Ordo Mass here, we have the Latin Mass, so it's all good. Talking about especially people in the Fraternity of St. Peter. I know some people in the Fraternity of St. Peter, wonderful people that I've met, people that have left it and joined us. But it strikes me as odd and sad that they will look at the Novus Ordo Mass and say, that's bad, and that's harmful, and we can't do that. But the same people, they don't realize this, the same people that changed the Mass and turned it into this disgrace also changed the Rite of Holy Orders into something that Pope Pius XII and other theologians have said that if it's changed in this way, exactly this way, it's not valid, it's not a true sacrament. They made changes to the Rite of Holy Orders so that any bishops consecrated in that rite are not valid bishops. So even if you have a Latin Mass, you don't have a true Mass. You don't have true sacraments if you don't have true priests. Again, this is just me trying to make a simple point. This isn't me trying to make the whole argument, because frankly, I don't have the skill, the talent to do that, and this isn't the place for it. But this is a discussion relating to this issue about J.D. Vance and these others that are looking to the Catholic Church as the Church of Christ and seeing something hypocritical here, something erroneous in what should not be. They don't realize, unfortunately. I wish there was some way to reach them. I wish there was some way to reach them and have a conversation with a true priest, with someone that understands these issues. It's very simple. It's not something that takes a degree in philosophy or theology to understand. It's very simple. If someone does not profess the Catholic faith, they're not a Catholic. If they obstinately deny the Catholic faith, they are no longer Catholic. If someone is not a Catholic, they're not a member of the Church, they can't be the head of that Church. So we don't have a Pope. I don't have it here right in front of me, but there's a long list of heresies that Francis has espoused. And I know the argument that comes back is, well, it wasn't ex cathedra. He wasn't teaching in his with his supreme authority, so that doesn't matter. Wrong. It does matter. It does matter what this guy says publicly, even if it's not in his, defining some dogma. If I were to say that there is no hell, you would rightly say, I'm not a Catholic. If I were to say that Christ thinks it's okay now for people to live together in a sinful marriage, a non-marriage, I should say. If I were to say that I'm going to come up with this new gospel, that it's okay for you to be married over and over and over and to live in these marriages. If I were to say that, you would rightly say that I'm not a Catholic because I'm denying what the Church teaches on that matter, what God's laws are on that matter. You would be right in saying that I'm not a Catholic anymore. I would have lost the faith. If that's true of me, and that's true of any Catholic, how is it that the supposed Pope is held to a different standard? Common sense, does that make any sense? Again, I'm not trying to be a jerk about this. I'm not trying to pretend I'm really smart or intelligent or that I look down on people. No, I'm just, what's the argument here? That everyone can go outside of the Church by denying the faith, but the Pope can't? The Pope can't fall from his office? This is something that's already been settled by Church law, that if a Pope, by manifest heresy, falls from the faith, falls into heresy, he loses his office. He's no longer a pope because he's no longer a Catholic. And that's exactly how the popes have said. It's exactly how church law phrases it. It's just very, very simple. Again, I'm not here to make that whole argument. I'm just here to bring it up in discussion and talk about it a little bit. For anyone that might listen to this that maybe hasn't heard it in this way, it's very simple. It's a very simplified version, and people can get lost in the weeds. It wasn't declared. It wasn't this. It wasn't ex cathedra. It's like there's a lot of holes in that issue, in the issues that they bring up in that regard. And it's just a very simple thing. If he's not a Catholic, he's not the Pope. If he's not the Pope, he doesn't have any authority. And it's dangerous. It's a really dangerous thing for your soul to follow this. So let's take an example from history. Let's go back to one of the first, if not the first, of the great heresies that you've probably heard of. You've heard of Arius. If you're a Catholic, you've heard of Arius. If you know anything about church history, you know about Arius. He denied the divinity of Christ. Now, let's say you're in that church and Arius is preaching. He goes up in the pulpit and he's preaching. And he starts to say that Christ is not really God. He denies this very basic dogma of our faith, that Jesus Christ, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, become man through the incarnation. And he says he's not God. What would you do? What do you do in that instance? You leave. You don't stay in the church. You don't keep going to him for confession, for Holy Communion, for the Mass, because he's no longer a Catholic. And if he's going to err in such a simple, basic thing, what other things is he going to mislead you by? Let's fast forward a couple centuries. Over 1,000 years later, Martin Luther hammers his proclamation or his thesis on the church doors. It says we're saved by faith alone, denies the authority of the Pope, and many, many other things. What do you do? If you want to be a Catholic, if you want to preserve the faith, if you want to please God and stay loyal and faithful to the church which he founded, to the faith which he revealed to us, what do you do in that instance? Do you follow the heretic? Do you say, well, it's not ex cathedra. We can't judge this guy. I'm just a layperson. I'm just a simple priest. I can't judge him. No. These are basic things, basic dogmas, basic truths of the faith that God has revealed to us. You stop going to him. If you were in that day, if you wanted to be a Catholic and stay faithful to the church, to the faith, you wouldn't continue listening to Martin Luther, even if he still did the Latin Mass. See how this is an important issue? It is not just about the Latin Mass, it's about the faith and being guided by clergy, by priests and others that actually profess the Catholic faith and stay faithful to it instead of leading others astray. I know someone can easily punch some holes into this analogy. No analogy is perfect when we talk about theological things. No, you can punch a hole in this and go into some different points that you can disagree with. But the basic principle is the same. This is really, and it's consistent with church teaching. Look at the Greek Orthodox, for example. They almost definitely still have valid sacraments. As far as I know, as I understand, some of them at least still have a valid Mass, even though it's not the Latin Mass. It was an early liturgy, and they haven't changed it, and they haven't changed the sacraments. If they have valid Mass and valid sacraments, can you go to them? And the answer is no. In danger of death, you could go to receive the sacraments. You could go to confession to an Orthodox priest, valid priest, in danger of death if you had no other way to get the sacraments. But you can't go there on Sundays, even if there's no other Mass to go to, because it's not a Catholic church. Because they've broken from the faith. They've denied the primacy of St. Peter. You might have a Latin Mass around you, or what looks to be a Latin Mass, but are they valid priests? I understand that it can be very confusing if you've been misled because so many people will look at post-Vatican II teachings and go through that and sift that. People that say worship with other religions, they'll listen to them, what they have to say on an issue, but they don't go back before. And from what I have read, what I have studied, from what I have been taught, from the objective evidence, if you go back to what was taught before Vatican II, it's really, really clear. It's very, very simple too. So I went on a bit longer, as usual, on this score. I wanted to get into some other things about it, the 4 marks of the church. That's something, if you have your catechism handy, go into the section about the 4 marks of the church. How can you identify the true Church of Christ? By seeing the 4 marks: 1, Holy, Catholic, and Apostolic. And look at those 4 marks. Look what the Catechism says, whether it's the Baltimore Catechism, whether it's the Catechism of the Council of Trent and others. Take a look at that. And if you have any questions about that, particular to what we're saying, that the chair of St. Peter is vacant and has been since the time of Pope Pius XII in 1958. If you have any questions on that score, please leave it in the comments. As I said, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, not trying to be mean or judgmental or like I know everything or nothing like that. It's a very simple issue, but has a lot of consequences if what we are stating is true. It's not like we're making any dogmatic pronunciations. We're just looking at the evidence and looking at the inevitable conclusion. In the words of a wonderful priest, a very holy priest, who has since passed away, Father Dennis Chicoine, one of the first CMRI priests, and the one that brought my parents to an understanding of what was going on in the church. In his words, we're not saying don't go to Mass. We're saying you don't have a Mass to go to. We are not saying don't listen to the Pope. We are saying you don't have a Pope to listen to. If you have any more questions on this, leave a comment. You can check out some of our websites that explains this in more detail, that has more substance than just my monologue. It has quotes from the popes, canon law, and other things, other theologians and saints that have spoken about this. And if you want clarity, I'm just going to end it here. If you want clarity on this issue, look at what was taught before Vatican II. The church can't contradict herself, can't change the law of God. And if you want clarity on this issue, look at what the popes, what theologians and others have said before Vatican II, and it all becomes pretty clear with time and with some prayer. Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you found something in it that was helpful or interesting. If you liked it, please leave a comment, leave a like, say a prayer for all of us that are involved in this project, and say a prayer for our leaders. That's a theme that I want to repeat over and over again. Pray for our country, pray for our leaders. Much can be accomplished by this means, prayer and sacrifice. Thank you for joining. I will be here again next week. Tomorrow, that's Saturday, we're going to be doing a live stream. I will be there, Kevin will be there, Eric should be there, Mr. Davis will be there. It should be an interesting show, and join us in that live show. The best part about the live shows is we get the interaction. We get the interaction with you. We get to hear your feedback, and that directs the conversation. It makes the live shows really, really interesting. So if you have the time, and if you're interested, join us on that live stream tomorrow. I'm certainly looking forward to it. I know our other hosts are as well. Thank you for joining us today. Pray for our country. Pray for us here that are working on this channel. And God bless you. Godspeed.